The fantasy football offseason is in full swing. We have rookie drafts going on right now, and a lot of people have rookie fever, and it is a great time to capitalize if you are a contender and target some veterans to help you make a push. So the first player that we're going to talk about is going to be Christian McCaffrey of the San Francisco 49ers. Christian McCaffrey is 28.9 years old. He turns 29 in the midway point of the season. And if you look at him in startups right now, he is the 55th player taken off the board. And honestly, I know there is some concern with him, right? With the age, with the injuries from last year, and he's valued as the Dynasty running back 15 per Dynasty Data Lab startup data. And this is a guy that I think if you are a contender, he's a guy that I'm targeting to buy right now in a lot of my leagues. I've already acquired him for some trades that we'll go over in a little bit. But Hoff, when you think about Christian McCaffrey, is this a guy that you think it's worth biting the bullet and taking the chance on maybe one, possibly 2 years of elite production?
Yeah, I think we're looking at about 2 years of elite production. You look at the 2 years prior to last year, he averaged 20 points on a per game basis. The offense is still going to revolve around Christian McCaffrey. I know they just extended Brock Purdy, but as long as Christian McCaffrey's healthy, he will be the focal point of that offense. And yeah, I would wholeheartedly buy in. And I think it's a matter of who is in your league, what situation they're in, and if they have Christian McCaffrey, they might feel differently depending on if they're win now or maybe they want to sell a bit to build up for the future. So I would look to take advantage of that if someone's looking to sell them.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a team. I'm trying to pull the contract up for him, but this is a team that extended him before last year. They are committed,
Mhm.
and when you think about it, they just lost an entire year. From him last year, right? This is a team that the room has Isaac Garendo. They have Patrick Taylor, and they just drafted Jordan James in the fifth round, who I don't mind taking a flyer on in some rookie drafts late in the fourth or fifth round. But Christian McCaffrey gets an extension from them, and he's signed with the team till 2027. He's got a decent amount of money left on his contract. You know, why wouldn't this team use him and grind him? They lose Debo Samuel, right? And it always seems like when Debo was out or Kittle was out, McCaffrey just became even more of a focal point in this offense. And I think if he's healthy, which all indications are that he's fine and good to go this season. Now, you know better than anybody, the 49ers coach speak when it comes to guys and their injuries and their
Sure.
health has kind of been a little bit of a disaster to navigate. But I'm not concerned about the workload. I think they're gonna use him. No.
Absolutely. And I mean, you kind of said it with Debo out. You look at the weeks in which not last year, the year prior, when we got a full year out of McCaffrey, you were looking at weeks where he had 22.6, 29.8. I believe Debo came back after the week 9 bye, but even after that, 20.2 points, 21.3. It's just Christian McCaffrey is going to get used. We can use the whole Debo Samuel's no longer in town. This opens things up, but at the end of the day, we're talking about one of the top players in fantasy football as long as he's healthy. So it's one of those, regardless of circumstance, he's gonna get work. So I have it. Only question mark: can he stay healthy? That's the only question we're asking with Christian McCaffrey. There's nothing else.
Yeah, and I feel like the injury thing is a little overblown with McCaffrey.
A little bit.
When you look at his history, right, first 3 years he played 16 games, 3 seasons straight. Then he in 2022 missed a majority of the season, only playing 3 games, and in 2021 he played 7 games. Right, there was that 2 years in 2020 and 2021 where people started to get a little bit concerned, right, because he only played 10 games in 2 seasons. But then he follows that up in 2022 with 17 games and then 16 games in 2023. It's not like this guy ended up tearing his ACL. He had the Achilles tendonitis, but I I have no reason to believe that he's not going to be used and be really good. And even in redraft, right? This is a guy that right now is going around, the turn in the second round, usually the
Yep.
first few picks in the second round. Now, there's going to be some leagues, and as this season off season goes on, if you're looking at redraft, there's a good chance that he's going to likely maybe fall and settle as like the 112, right? It wouldn't surprise me, but because as people start to get more data, as people start to buy in more, we start to see him at training camp in the offense, and we get more good reports. But likely that means his dynasty cost is going to go up a little bit too, probably, right? For contenders. And when we look at some of the trades that he's been involved in, right? I see you can get him here, right? This owner in a two quarterback, 12 team league. It's a full PPR, a 206, a 207, and a 303. Now, if I'm in a really good spot, right? Now I like a lot of these players that fall in these picks. So that's a decent amount of picks to give up. But if I'm a contender and I can get two really strong years and I don't need the depth, I'm fine making a trade like this. I mean, even for the 111, no?
Yeah, absolutely. No, yeah, I would absolutely be okay with doing that. I mean, again, it's kind of like you're illustrating the point. It depends on who has McCaffrey, what position they're in. But yeah, if you're in a win now mode, yeah, I would absolutely part ways with those picks that you're talking about. I mean, even in our own dynasty startup, I made sure to take McCaffrey because I'm in a win now mode. That's it. So yeah, I would part ways with that on the idea that you're going to win this year. And again, like you said, those two previous years with the 49ers, he played full seasons. So
Yeah. And the last thing I'd say is, I mean, if you look at a lot of these trades, I mean, he's settling in somewhere around like that 111, 112, right? That's what it
yep.
looks like his value is. But I talked on the Risers and Fallers show with Chuck last week. And look, I mean, people's value for Christian McCaffrey is all over the place. I mean, nobody knows how to value him, right? Because in some regards, you feel like you could be getting a huge discount on a player that look, when he was on the field, he looked good last year, right? And we're seeing guys in this mold where they can catch the football, like they're aging better, and he's in an awesome system. Look, I understand it looks like the 49ers, had a little bit of a strange offseason to some, but that system's still going to be favorable for a guy like him, and I expect him to smash, and he is 100% a guy that I would be looking to acquire if I'm competing. Stefon Diggs is another player that we are targeting if you are a competitor. And look, we get it. The injuries coming off of a torn ACL, the age, 31 years old, but he lands in New England with Drake May and not a lot of weapons. And, per Mike Reese of the Patriots beat report, they're reporting that Stephon Diggs is well ahead of schedule as he's recovering from his October torn right ACL, and he's gaining increased comfort, cutting and changing of direction. And if you've seen some of the videos online, he does look like he is progressing well. This is a dude who right now is wide receiver 56 in startup ADP. He's practically free, and he's 143 when it comes to the pick off the board if you're looking at Dynasty Data Labs startup ADP. Hoff, what are your thoughts on Stephon Diggs, and sell me on why you should be buying him or taking a chance on him if you're a contender?
Well, you're taking a chance based on price, that's for sure. But beyond that, you look at what he was doing last year up until his injury. He suffered that injury, played the first, 8 games of the season. He was the wide receiver 8 at that point. He had 5 games with 14 or more points. But by the way, 4 of those games were when Nico Collins was healthy in weeks 1 through 5. Remember, Nico Collins had that injury that he sustained, the hamstring injury, where he was out for a couple of weeks. By the time he came back, Diggs was off the table, but yeah, I like the production that we were even getting from Diggs, even when he wasn't the main guy in the offense. And now you're going to the Patriots, which like you said, the wide receiver room is pretty barren. I mean, they did draft Kyle Williams in the third round, but outside of that, it looks a lot like what it looked like last year, which wasn't very appetizing. So I like the opportunity here for Diggs and everything we're hearing about the knee. Some information not as recent, but it looks like he's going to be good to go. So I don't know why you wouldn't buy in, especially at the cost.
Yeah, and cost is key here, right? I mean, taking a look at some recent trades on Dynasty Daddy, right? His value is kind of all over the place. I think if I'm looking at him, I would maybe look for maybe like a James Conner for Diggs swap if you have the ability to move him. A 202 is a little rich. I wouldn't do that. The 208 I can consider, but ironically, you can get his now running mate, Kyle Williams. This is where his ADP is starting to settle right now. But I'm okay once you start to get to the 208 late second range of taking a chance on him. Maybe you can get like a third rounder in a rookie draft kicked back.
Yeah.
Or maybe you can do a player for player swap. I mean, when you look at some of the guys going around him in startup ADP, I mean, you have guys like Xavier Leggett, right? If I would move Xavier Leggett if you're a contender for Stefon Diggs, and I wouldn't
Yeah.
even think twice about it, right? And I I look at Diggs, and you just have to understand what you're getting, right? Like you are getting a high floor, right, from a guy who is he's going to get a lot of targets in this offense. I like Kyle Williams. Pop Douglas is there, right? Pop Douglas is a guy. I mean, he's solid. I mean, but Stefon Diggs is likely going to be the alpha in this room, and Kyle Williams is going to complement him well. And I think this offense has a chance. Now the defense got better, so I don't know how much they're going to be playing from behind and how much Drake May is going to be throwing 30 to 35 passes a game. But there's really not anybody else that's going to command a strong target share, and he's going to raise the floor for you. I mean, he could be a nice plug-in, flex wide receiver, probably like a wide receiver 3 for you with low end wide receiver 2 upside if he recovers from the ACL well, which all indications say that he is right now.
And I mean, you even mentioned it, like the Xavier Leggett conversation. I mean, just sit and ask yourself, who's going to get more targets this year? It shouldn't take you more than a tenth of a second to answer that question. It's going to be Stephon Diggs. So it's especially when you're getting a player like you said could be your wide receiver 3 potentially, but you're talking about him being the team leader in targets. I mean, that means something. That's what we call value. So to me, it's just a perfect opportunity. Again, the only thing, like we discussed with McCaffrey, even though injuries aren't as frequent with Diggs, it will be how was he recovered? How is he moving around? Is he limited in any capacity? I don't think he's going to be. It didn't sound like the knee injury itself was as bad as, say, a Brandon Ayuk. People are a little more worried about that. But yeah, I mean, again, it's opportunity, 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 and that's what you want in fantasy football. And I mean, you're going to get that with Stephon Diggs in this Patriots offense. It's just a no brainer for me.
If you're a contender with a hole at the running back position, and say maybe you already had your rookie draft, I would look at Tony Pollard of the Tennessee Titans. They get Cam Ward, the number one overall pick. We expect the offense to be a little bit better. I mean, it was an absolute disaster last year, but even with
Yep.
how bad the offense was last year, Tony Pollard was not bad. Running back 33 in Dynasty Data Labs startup ADP right now. He's 122 in terms of total pick off the board. And if you look at his fast draft ADP, he's 66, which is a pretty good value, right? You're looking for, some uniqueness in your roster, maybe on a fast draft team like a flex 4. Tony Pollard is a guy that I don't mind taking some shares of to get some uniqueness. But I overall think that this offense should be a little bit better than they were last year. Huff, what are your thoughts on Tony Pollard?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more than fair to assume or to and or hope that the Titans offense is gonna be better than it was last year. I think that coaching staff has had just about enough of Will Levis, which who could blame them? But yeah, Pollard is interesting because he's not the sexiest name coming off the board there, but he did tie with Brees Hall. He got 58% of the team's rushing attempts. Not a lot of guys can say that. You had a couple this year, obviously, that were in the 60s, but really 58%, you're talking about that's top of the league. That's top 10 in terms of running back share. One game with 20 points last year in PPR formats. He did have 9 games with 10 or more points. Obviously, with that, then if you do the math, he did have 7 games with less than 10. So there is a little bit of, there could be some dud performances in there. But again, you're not paying. This isn't a running back you're probably starting every single week. but it could be a nice guy to fill the gap. So, before we started this conversation, I wasn't as in on Tony Pollard, but now I'm starting to buy in, actually.
Yeah, Tony Pollard is kind of James Conner-esque. Maybe
Mm,
not the ceiling of James Conner, where we've seen him score a ton. Conner's in a better offense, but overall, Pollard is a guy that you know you're likely getting. You're getting middle to low end RB2 production, and that's not that bad if you're a contender, depending on what you're giving up. But you mentioned it. Pollard didn't have a bad year last year. He's 28 years old. You buy him this year, maybe you get another year out of him next year, right? If he continues to produce well. And look, this is a team that was 14th in run rate, despite the fact that they were probably playing from a negative game script the majority of the time. 12th in rushing yards in 2024, 57 targets last year. That was ninth overall for running backs. And people will cite Tajay Spears, right, who looks to be more like the satellite back, but Pollard, it didn't matter. Pollard was still ninth in total targets for the running back position, and ninth in opportunity share, which you alluded to before. They did bring Travis Etienne's brother in via the draft, but it wasn't high draft capital, and I'm not really too high on Travis Etienne's brother, Trevor Etienne. And overall, I just think that Pollard's a good guy where, look, I'm not saying Tony Pollard, look at him to be your RB2 on a contender and it's going to put you over the top, but provide some nice depth, right? If the running backs on the board in the rookie draft, maybe you're in the third round and you're looking and you don't really have a solid third running back on your team and you don't want to take a chance on a rookie because you don't know how much production they'll give you this year. Tony Pollard is a great example of a guy that you could likely trade for somewhere around a late second to early third round pick, depending on the league, or maybe kick in just a 2026 second round pick, right? I mean, I,
yeah,
I don't always love giving up picks that I don't obviously know where they're projected to be, right? And if you're a contender though, and you're giving up a second, that's likely a late second next season. And I'm always of the opinion there's so much time to accumulate picks from now until then. So I'm not too concerned about giving up a pick next year. I hoard my firsts a little bit more than I
sure.
do my seconds and beyond.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And by the way, you mentioned Tajay Spears. I mean, I mentioned the 58% of the carries that Pollard had with that Titans offense. In terms of Tajay Spears, you're talking about 19%. He did have 7% of the target share with the Titans, but guess what? Pollard had 11%. So, we can have these little views of Tajay Spears all we'd like, but I mean, there's still going to be more opportunity there for Pollard. And yeah, when you're talking about some of the costs there involved, parting ways with certain picks, I agree. I would try and covet first round picks more. I don't think that that's even a discussion in terms of a Pollard, of course. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm in on Pollard with the cost in mind. Just know you're not getting the best back in the league, but you are getting a back who's going to have opportunity.
Right, and I think that's the key. I understand, as I alluded to before. Like you said, Pollard's not going to be maybe a league winner for you, but this is a guy that consistently produced as an RB2. And there was a lot of games last year where he was phased out towards the end. There was Cincinnati. He had zero targets. He had 17 carries against Cincinnati. In week 16, he had 8 carries. In week 13, he had 8. I think that was due to some injuries down the stretch, which kind of skewed and affected some of his numbers. But overall, I mean, the beginning of the year, he was RB12, RB18, then RB49, then RB14, 15, 31, 22, then back to 12. Then he had an RB5 finish. He consistently had a strong amount of high end RB2 and low end RB1 finishes last year. So I'm in. I mean, if we're taking a look, first of all, Antonio Gibson, the fact that he's even in a trade sounds crazy. Now, this is a lot to give up for Pollard. I'm not advocating to give up 2 picks and a player. That's pretty
No.
expensive. But in a situation like this, yeah, second round pick in 2026, I'm okay doing stuff like that. A lot of times you're seeing him a throw-in. I this is interesting too. I think you should be able to get Pollard for Myers straight up in some leagues, depending. But It's all going to depend on how your league mates value him, right? But right here, 212, depending on what's on the board. I mean, there is a fall off. Once Tootin and Scadaboo are gone in the second round, there's not a lot of high impact running backs with clear paths in the rookie draft. I like a lot of the running backs. I think there'll be some good ones. I like Taj Brooks. I like some of these ones in the third round, but again, none that I think will give you an immediate impact and players that I can project their volume. With Tony Pollard, I can project. I know he's going to touch the ball 250 times this year at least, when you combine the receptions and the carries. But I think that's going to close this out there. Did you have anything else you want to say on Pollard?
No, not on Pollard, but I do miss the glory days of one Antonio Gibson. You look at 2020, 2021, 11 touchdowns, 7 touchdowns. Feels like a lifetime ago. But yes, but I'm in on Tony Pollard.
Antonio Gibson was a good example of another like guy that in rookie drafts was practically free that year,
Yep,
and ended up carving out a role pretty quickly. I think he was a converted wide receiver to running back too. But
I
awesome. Well,
believe that's right.
we'll close that out and move to the next one. Davonte Adams continues to be a player that I feel like is not really being talked about enough. He lands with the LA Rams, Matthew Stafford next to Puka Nakua, and I'm absolutely bullish on this landing spot for him. I get it, right? We're talking about veterans that you're going to trade for that, if you're a contender. He's 32 years old, 32.4 to be exact. And so at the end of the season, he's going to be 33. But you look at him right now, wide receiver 41 in startup ADP per Dynasty Data Lab. He's going off the board at pick 103 in startups. Fast
Mm.
draft ADP is 44.25. And I mean, to me, could not have landed in a better offense, in a better situation. I know people are a little concerned because of Puka Nakua, but what are your thoughts on Davonte Adams? And why should people be considering buying him if they're contenders?
Listen, this isn't to take anything away from Puka Nakua at all, but I mean, Davonte Adams did play with a wide receiver by the name of Garrett Wilson last year. He still finished as a top 12 wide receiver, did score 20 or more points in 5 of his games. He had a one big boom week against the Dolphins on the road that was for more than 30 points. So, Davante Adams will do just fine with the opportunity that he's given. You're talking about some of these prices, and it's too good to be true, in my opinion. And I think the thing to keep in mind here for some of the viewers when we're talking about veteran contenders that you're going to buy into is a lot of these players we're talking about, they're a little bit long in the tooth. These are short-term investments, which sometimes isn't a very popular thing in Dynasty. Everybody wants the young, shiny toy, but I think Davante Adams is a great player that you can have here. And by the way, I mean, his last year in Vegas, I mean, he finished as the wide receiver 10 there. So it wasn't even a has Davante Adams lost a step. It was just will the quarterbacks on the Las Vegas Raiders get Davante Adams killed eventually, for anybody who watched the receivers on Netflix. But no, I'm all in on Davante Adams, especially at that cost.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Puka Nakua, and when we look at Cooper Cup and Puka Nakua, who played 12 and 11 games, last season, both missed some time. Both are guys that had 100 plus targets, though, in just 12 and 11 games, right? I mean, Matthew Stafford knows how to get his players the football. And this is an offense that has 205 vacated targets, right? Cooper Cup is gone. Tyler Johnson last year had 41 targets. Demarcus Robinson had 64. Right there, you add up those three players and you're looking at 200 targets, right? That's not including the fact that Tutu Atwell had 62 targets last year. Kobe Parkinson had 49. Jordan Whittington had 28, right? I mean, so there is more than enough to go around, in my opinion, in this offense. This is a guy that had 141 targets in 14 games. I get it. He was paired up for the majority of that with his boy Aaron Rodgers. And so Rodgers kind of force fed him at times, but it also
Right.
says a lot about Adams that like it doesn't really feel like he's missed or lost a step at all. Ninth in points per game. I look at some of the trades and honestly, one guy it's not shown here, but one trade I would consider making is Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed for
Mm,
Davonte Adams. Maybe if you're giving up Reed because of the youth, you might be able to get an up, even a pick added on top of that. It's not a high pick, but you might be able to get Reed. Davonte Adams for Reed and a pick on top. But I would do that in a heartbeat, honestly, if I'm a contender. And looking at some of these trades here, Cortland Sutton, you're pretty much swapping. I'm a Broncos fan, but I would take Davonte Adams just because of the ceiling. I mean, I think
yep.
Sutton probably has more years left in him, but I mean, I, Sutton's not a guy that's going to win you your week, really, right? Outside of last year, maybe that connection with Bo Nix starts to continue to cook. But I mean, I would take Davante Adams all day. What about you?
I absolutely would too, and I would just go back to again. I know we talked about the short term investments in terms of these players, but when you're acquiring these players, chances are, and we referenced this a little bit earlier, talking about Christian McCaffrey, you're in a win now mode, and I think if you want to do some of these trades like you're talking about, Pete, which yeah, I'm wholeheartedly on board. If you're at that point where you want to win a championship before maybe you have to blow some of it up or some of these guys are going to retire, I'd absolutely take this. And by the way, I mean, I know the number of targets is different when we're talking about percentages from team to team, but you mentioned Cooper Cup earlier. I mean, he had 18% of the team's targets only played in 12 games. I mean, Davonte Adams had 19%. And again, he joined the Jets a little bit later. So um, I, I absolutely love this price for Davonte Adams. I'd probably, to be honest, I would take him over even as much as I love Diggs. I'm a big Diggs guy this year. I would take Adams over Diggs as well. But these trades you're mentioning, yeah, I would do these trades for sure,
Yeah, this
especially the Jaden Reed one.
The Jaden Reed one for sure, and I didn't see that one on here, but it was just something that kind of came to my head because Reed
Okay,
is going a few spots behind Davante Adams, but I think managers value guys all over the place, right? This other one here is a little interesting. Josh Downs for Adams straight up, right? Right now, Davante Adams is wide receiver 41, Downs is wide receiver 43 in startup. I think that one's interesting too. Again, it seems short sighted. I really like Josh Downs.
sure,
I truly believe that he can be a guy that I think can win you a week. Just because I just think he has that kind of ability.
yeah,
But we just don't know the quarterback situation there, and that could be a
that was
guy
it.
that we don't know how soon he's going to contribute consistently on a week to week basis. Though last year he did have some really strong weeks and actually was fairly consistent. But if I'm thinking about this season and I'm trying to win now, I
Yeah.
would I would even do that move if you can get somebody to do it, which I don't think is that crazy because again, you're looking at startup ADP and they're going just 4 picks away from each other. So I don't think that's that out of the question.
No, the quarterback situation over there in Indianapolis is beyond questionable. I mean, we can watch as many out routes as we want with Anthony Richardson on X, and it looks great. But when we've seen him on the field during the year, it hasn't been great. We don't know what happens beyond Anthony Richardson. So, I mean, I would be, with all that in mind, I would be willing to make that trade as well, with Downs involved.
Well, you see, it's kind of like the Jameis Winston LASIK thing. Anthony Richardson's now
Mm.
wearing rec specs.
Oh,
So
well, that changes
apparently
everything.
everybody thinks that's going to be the difference maker. But yeah,
Never
I
mind.
we'll
Deal's off
see
the
it.
table.
I'll see it. I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah,
But moving on. Now, our last player we're going to talk about is at the tight end position. It is Evan Engram, who is now with the Denver Broncos, 30 years old, 30.7 to be exact, turns 31 later this season. Right now, he's going off the board as tight end 17 in startups, and he's pick 135. Fast draft ADP right now, he's at 76 in the flex four. He's practically going undrafted in the flex four. Again, when you're playing in these smaller builds like in fast draft where there's not a lot of players, uniqueness matters, right? And so could be somebody that's interesting to target depending on your build. But Hoff, Evan Ingram, right? We thought maybe there was a chance he was going to sign with the Chargers this year. He ends up
sure.
signing in division with Denver, and it seemed like both teams offered the same amount of money, but he chose Denver. I think that is a sign. He tweeted out a video or a GIF of the actual Joker, which if you follow the Broncos and Sean Payton, probably maybe not as much as I do as a Broncos
Hmm.
fan, but they have always talked about wanting a joker, right, in this offense. And I think maybe that is partially why Evan Ingram signed there because Sean Payton sold him on how they're going to use him in this offense. But is he or sell me as to I mean, you don't gotta sell me. I'm
Yeah,
buying.
I know this.
But tell the viewers why Evan Ingram is somebody that they should consider if they are a contender.
There were 2 positions that I wanted the Denver Broncos to fill up on the offensive side of the ball in terms of my interests in fantasy football. One of them was running back. They did that in the draft with RJ Harvey. Tight end, here it is with Evan Ingram. I like Evan Ingram a lot. I liked him last year. Granted, only played in 9 games. What was it? He was injured week 1. After that, though, when he came back in week 6, 18.2 points, 8.5, 13.6, 11.5, 10 points. So he was giving you 10 points per game often, which is very nice to have. And yeah, you know, if you've watched Sean Payton long enough, you know, even his days, of course, obviously, way back when with the Saints, you've seen what he's done with tight ends before. Now, I'm not saying Evan Ingram is going to finish as a top 3 tight end this year. Probably not even top 5. You know, I could say 6, 7, maybe, but 10, yeah, depending on your rankings. But I like Ingram a lot this year. I think he's going to get used in this offense. It's very intriguing, and it only helps when we're talking about these weapons that they now have Bo Nix there, who is a quarterback in which Sean Payton appears to trust.
Yeah, I mean, with Evan Ingram, he was on pace last year for 120 targets in 2024. He ends up getting 64 in 9 games. And in 2023, 143 targets, right? We've seen him in 2020 have 109 targets, and his rookie season, this is a guy that had 115 targets.
Mhm.
Um, you mentioned top 5, top 3. It would not shock me if we're sitting here, at the end of the season and Evan Ingram is, the 5th ranked tight end in points this season. It really wouldn't shock me. I mean, there's no clear wide receiver 2 on this Denver offense. You have Cortland Sutton, you have Marvin Mims, who took some steps forward last year and was good. I just don't know how much of a target hog he's going to be. You have Devon Vele. They just drafted Patrick Bryant. You have Troy Franklin. I mean, there's no clear cut number 2. And again, I think they're looking at Evan Ingram as a guy who is likely going to be their number 2. I think he's going to
Yeah,
have the second most targets on this offense. And when you look at Evan Ingram, and you think about, some of the players going around him, Travis Kelce or Evan Ingram this year. I mean, gun to your head, who are you taking? I mean, if you could flip Travis Kelce for Evan Ingram, and Travis Kelce is going at tight end 16, Evan Ingram is
yeah.
tight end 17 in startup ADP, who would you rather have?
I would rather have Evan Ingram. If it's a best ball format, maybe I'll go with Kelsey because I don't have to worry about the games in
Yeah,
which, because it seems like on the back end of his career here, there's some games where he's not delivering points. But if
sure.
we talk about a redraft, if we talk about dynasty, I'm taking Evan Ingram here. And yeah, you referenced it. I was going to mention it, but yeah, the targets there in Denver. I mean, outside of Cortland Sutton, there's not a huge demand for targets that's going to eat away at anything that Evan Ingram could do. Now, is he going to get like say the 143 targets that you mentioned? That was the year before last. I don't think that's happening. But I mean, listen, can you see him get between 65 to 85, maybe 90 targets potentially in this offense? I don't see why that doesn't happen. The one thing I'm curious to see is if he can continue to put up touchdowns. In the previous 2 seasons before last, he had
Yeah.
4 touchdowns in each year. Last year, only the 1, but again, injured for a majority of the year, only played in 9 games. So, I trust Sean Payton to put Evan Ingram in a position, to succeed. Listen, whenever I think of that, I think of the days of, Jimmy Graham back in the day. Evan Ingram will not be Jimmy Graham, spoiler alert, but he can be very productive for fantasy. I like him a lot, and, you know, when you are taking tight ends after those big names go off the board, Evan Ingram is one of my favorite names in that next crop of players at the position.
Yeah, I mean, volume has never really been an issue with him. It's as you alluded to, it's really about getting into the end zone, right? Receiving touchdowns, 1, 4, 4, 3. It's really about can he get into the end zone and score, and can he stay healthy, right? But we've seen him stay healthy over the last few seasons, right? Last year, 9 games he missed. But prior to that, I mean, 17 games 2 years in a row,
Yep.
15 games in 2021, and 16 games in 2020, right? So he's been relatively healthy since 2020 outside of last year. And, he did miss some time his second season in the NFL, but I'm not worried about the volume. And I think they're going to get creative to get him, touches in the red zone. So I'm bullish on him. And he's a guy that I'm comfortable, moving a late second round pick for, or maybe a future second, depending on how
Yeah.
badly you need help at the position. Which, as we know, it is hard to find production at the tight end position, and when you have production, people don't really want to give that up very much. And so his age, I think, helps in getting a nice value for him right now.
Yeah, also averaged 10 yards per reception in about 5 years out of his career. Also averaging, you mentioned the volume, no stranger to volume, does pretty well with it. He's averaged 6.7 targets per game over the course of his career. So, yeah, I love the opportunity, love the landing spot. Again, two positions I wanted filled in Denver. I'm intrigued by both of them, running back and tight end. I am in on Evan Ingram.
Yeah, and the last thing I'd say is, when we talk about aging, we're looking at veterans here, right? To target, you know, tight end position tends to age rather well.
Sure.
It's one of those positions that for some reason doesn't have as quickly of a fall off, and we see guys successful, in their early to mid 30s. So that would be another case where even if you're buying Evan Ingram, right? I mean, as long as he stays healthy and nothing catastrophic happens, you're likely getting another 2 to maybe even 3 good seasons out of him. And definitely worth giving up some capital for him. So but that's going to do it for us, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hit that like button and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Rookie, 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 rookie. It's all about rookie talk in fantasy football right now. So why not go use all that knowledge to do something other than a mock draft? Chris Jimino won $8,000 with just 2 teams last year, and each draft took 5 minutes. That's pretty good ROI. You can start doing rookie drafts for money today on Fast Draft. The Origins tournament is live. It is the place to go and monetize your knowledge of rookies and use your favorite player profiler host promo code for a $25 deposit match. Now let's go start drafting faster.